Avi Meyers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. www.ntnm on the web. All our shows are on YouTube over the last 7-8 years. You can catch them all there. Community policing is alive and well in the 24th District, caps24.org. Jewish Chicago will be out Thursday, February 27th for the start of early voting. If you go to the NTNM website, you'll get the links to all the good Jewish Chicago propaganda as well as past issues. It is judicial season. The 9th Sub-Circuit is my favorite spot of all possible spots. It's where I live. There's tons of action here always. Lots of candidates. It's probably the liveliest of all the sub-circuits this time around. It is my pleasure to introduce you to one of the candidates for the 9th Sub-Circuit, Thomas B. Cushing. How you doing?
Good. How you doing, Avi?
Good, thanks. And tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here, Avi, and I apologize to you and your listeners for my scratchy voice. I get a cold once every 5 years, and it is upon me this week, so I'm pleased to be here. My background is that I was born and raised actually in what is currently the 9th Sub-Circuit. I grew up on the northwest side of the city in a little sliver of the 41st Ward, just inside the city limits there as it gets close to the Leaning Tower Y. I went to school in the area, to Loyola Academy, and then away to the University of Notre Dame. Taught for a couple years in the Humboldt Park neighborhood and met a lot of terrific people that I wouldn't have met otherwise, but for being down in Humboldt Park in the 1980s. I will say it was a very different place at Division and Western in the early 1980s than it is today.
Oh, yeah.
my wife and I were down there recently, and we said, well, let's see if there's any of the places we remember where we can get something to eat. And we couldn't, not only couldn't we park to eat in those restaurants, the lines for the valet parking were too long to get in there. And the notion that there'd be valet parking at Division and Ashland or Division and Damon in 1983 would have been science fiction. So I spent a couple of years down there teaching grade school, and then when I went to law school at Loyola downtown, continued to stay active in that neighborhood for several years. Worked as a trial lawyer for 17 or 18 years with my brother, John Cushing, and his partner, and had a primarily plaintiff's personal injury practice, although we did all kinds of litigation. I had the honor to try a couple of serious felony cases, as well as a handful of serious civil cases on behalf of businesses, and then a number of injury cases where we were proud to have generated many results in excess of $1 million for our clients.
Wow.
Also was proud that I earned distinction in the legal community, being invited to join the Society of Trial Lawyers of Illinois, the Chicago chapter, which I was very proud to be invited to do, as well as the inaugural group in the Circle of Advocates at Loyola University School of Law. At that time, I spent a fair bit of time as well as an adjunct professor at Loyola, teaching trial practice and trial techniques, as well as the rules of civil procedure at Loyola. So I really, I suppose, can't get away from that teaching bug. I think it makes my wife nuts. She's, all right, enough already. You keep explaining stuff. I don't want to hear it anymore. I made a shift about 7 or 8 years ago towards focusing on environmental advocacy, and spent about 4 years at the Chicago Climate Exchange, where I was one of the senior officers at that company. And it's the place where carbon trading was really invented and born. There's a guy named Richard Sandor, who's a transplanted Chicagoan from New York, who came up with the idea of tradable allowances to help inspire a reduction in greenhouse gases. He's the type of guy that you meet him and you say, hey, I've met somebody that maybe will someday win the Nobel Prize. He's that kind of a guy. Had a very fascinating run with him for about 4 years, and we built the largest national cap and trade program in any country, but we were doing it on a voluntary basis here in the US through the Chicago Climate Exchange, as opposed to in Europe where it's mandatory. Then I spent a couple of years in the not-for-profit sector doing work again as an advocate, most notably with the Delta Institute, where I was one of the people who helped to run that under Gene Pogge, the CEO there. And the most interesting assignment that came out of that was that Gene and I are the folks who helped to facilitate Mayor Rahm Emanuel's task force on the redevelopment of the Fisk and Crawford power stations. You're probably aware that Chicago had the last 2 large coal-burning power plants generating electricity in the United States. They were shut down about 2 years ago, and then we were brought in to herd the cats at the table that consisted of the power generator, Midwest Generation, Commonwealth Edison, who was at the table, and primarily the 3 environmental groups who've been picketing them for years, saying, you lousy SOBs, you got to stop polluting. And so the mayor said, all right, we need to bring these people to the table and talk about how should these facilities be re-envisioned and how should this space be redeveloped so that now that we've taken care of the environmental issue of not burning any more coal, what's going to make these productive pieces of property for the community. So it's been a fascinating piece of work for me to do and have enjoyed it. Now fully enmeshed in my own legal practice as well, representing a couple of large recyclers in the area and having a ball.
Cool. By the way, I've read an awful lot about those power plants and the cap and trade stuff and the gentleman you're talking about. What are the boundaries of the 9th Subcircuit?
Well, I think in terms of maps. So in my mind, you're Lake Michigan,
Yeah.
and we have Rogers Park, the 49th and 50th wards. Then you work your way north. You have Evanston. You have almost all of Wilmette, and then you go west from Evanston, and you have Skokie, Lincolnwood, Morton Grove, a little bit of Northfield. I think there's a little sliver of Winnetka, but very small, and some of Glenview west of Lehigh, and then a little bit of the 40th, 41st, maybe the 38th wards, but just little slivers. So Devon Avenue to the south, the lake to the east. Good luck going to the west as you kind of work your way through those towns. And then same way with the north. It's kind of cut along, but Wilmette, and then kind of going straight across.
Gotcha. So this is your first try at elected office?
It is indeed. I've thought about it many times in life and have had people say, oh my gosh, you should be a politician. I said, the last thing I want to be is a politician. But I would like to be a judge, and I recognize that this is the route. So this is my first time doing it.
Very good. And how do you go about meeting people?
I'm fortunate. As I say, I grew up in the area. I'm one of a family originally of 8. And so there's already a broad network of people who know me and my family. And so I've really been fortunate in terms of kind of bringing back in all the strands of the people that I've known and my family has known through the years. And also taking advantage of the opportunity to reach out, community meetings, organizations. I've had an opportunity to meet a lot of great elected officials in the area who obviously naturally are connectors. So have enjoyed that process immensely.
Are you going out to all these different events and things, or?
I am, and it's a new experience. Somebody said, so how are you spending your time? I said, well, coming to events for my opponents like this one. I was kidding, of course. But, and you know, I'm in a crowded race where there's 4 other candidates, and so we do cross one another's paths. And I always make it a point to stop and say hello to whichever one of the other people it is who's in my race and say hello. Life is too short for this to be an acrimonious process. And I know some folks have the sense that, you know, we're destined to become, you know, angry with one another, and I don't see it that way.
It doesn't work that way.
I don't think so.
I'll tell you this. Basically, I know, well, counting you now, I know 4 of the people in the race, and 3 I think highly of. So, and you're included in that factor.
Thank you.
The other guy I brushed with, but we haven't actually met. So at some point. I assume you have a website?
I do. It's cushingforjudge.org. Cushing is C-U-S-H-I-N-G. 4 is spelled out. Cushingforjudge.org.
And are you on Facebook or social media? Do you do any of that?
The people, I'm going to confess that I'm a little bit of a social media novice. That's putting it mildly.
Yeah.
And I have folks, one of my kids said, oh my God, Dad, you came up on my Facebook page. So the answer is yes. One of my kids told me somehow or another I'm on Facebook. But beyond that, we're working to develop that and make better use of it.
Cool. So no, it's very useful. And as a matter of fact, I don't use Facebook to chummy with my friends or talk about the latest, like Hershey's candy. Basically, I use it for business.
Right.
And I've actually met more political people and do more communicating with judicial candidates, even things like selling ads. I mean, Facebook has been absolutely great for me. So anyway, Thomas B. Cushing, cushingforjudge.org, that's your website.
It is.
He's also on Facebook. Type his name in there, the thing will pop up. And I want to thank you very much for being here, and good luck in the campaign.
I want to thank you, Avi. Much appreciated.
My pleasure. Thank you.